Guys, thank you so much for joining us this happy Thursday morning. We'll just wait a few more minutes for people to come on in. I know we've had lots of people register for this webinar, so thank you for setting the time aside to come and hang out with us. I know a lot of people too have registered knowing that they can't come this morning and are looking forward to grabbing a recording, which is always okay. We don't mind either way. As we go, Mel is going to be in charge. I am the sidekick today, and so my job is to not talk the whole time, which many of you know, Mel particularly, is not a skill set of mine. It is a strength. So I promise to mute myself. But as always,
if you to jump in, and you've got a lot to add to this stuff. You are this personified, so I think jump in.
I'll hold back where I can. But as always, questions. So please use the chat box. Type your questions as you go. I'll try and keep an eye on that while Mel's presenting, and we'll try and answer them as we go. But we always prefer you to engage with us than talk at a computer screen for an hour and hope that you found it interesting. That's not our goal at all. So yeah,
good stuff. We've got about a quarter of registration, so online already. So I would say that if they're not online the next minute or so, then definitely looking for a recording.
They're getting their coffee.
I think so.
Would you like to get started, Mel?
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome everybody, and thanks for, again, just echoing Clarissa's sentiments about being here and being present and sharing your time with us. So I'll make sure that it's super valuable. If you have been to any of my workshops or webinars before, and it's been a while since I've done a webinar, you should know that it's full of information that is implementable, actionable. And today should be no different. So welcome to Scaling Reputation for Law Firms. Today we're going to cover off the 7 mistakes that I see law firms and other professional services doing quite regularly, and rather than just give you the mistakes, I'm actually going to talk you through what you can do instead, so that you don't make those mistakes, or at least stop the direction if you're already on that trajectory, I guess. So welcome to, and this is not, of course it's not going to work for me, there we go. Welcome to my good friend and colleague in business, Clarissa Rayward. Thank you for joining me. As I said, Clarissa is absolutely the epitome of scaling reputation. And so, as we know, she has 2 businesses. She has the 2 separate silos. One is BFLC, family law firm, and the other is the market of happy people seeking happiness in law and giving energy and time to that. So if you came to the club retreat last year, and fingers crossed we will have a retreat still this year, you would have
Let's hope.
Let's hope. Fingers crossed. We all need some Kingscliff in our life. I can guarantee it after this. So yeah, if you were there, I did talk about this concept of scaling reputation. So if you were there, we're going to talk about a very small part of what I covered off in that presentation. So if you do see a couple of, one thing in particular, don't worry, we're going to move on past that and get to some newer content, but it's just about contextualizing, I guess. But in that presentation I did talk about Clarissa and where she started and what I've seen her do over the last it's almost 7 years now since Clarissa and I crossed paths at a business course, who crazily decided to do that with almost 1-year-olds and or 1-year-olds we had at the time, and so saw that process. And as you all know, Clarissa has her podcast. She started off with blog writing and article writing and really developed rapport with her prospects and clients that way, and then obviously extended that to the law community further, then her expertise and specialisation in family law and separating amicably. So we all can see, I think, and make the connection between her efforts and energies through to actually being able to scale her reputation in a way that impacts both of those businesses positively. So this is really today about thinking about what can scaling reputation do for your firm, and we're going to talk about how to get into that.
Can I add something now, because you won't say all of these things. Now you can go to you, because I'm going to talk about you.
I'm not saying anything now. I'm speaking at a conference.
Yeah, I love that shot. when Mel and I were sort of coming together to talk about this webinar this morning, you know, we did meet 7 years ago, and in that time we have become great friends, but we collaborate all the time in business. And this is, I guess, one of the things that I love about working with many of you on this call as well, is when you find great people and you can work together, you can come up with amazing ideas, and cool stuff just happens. And very much Mel has helped me on that journey over the last 7 years, and still today's a great example. You know, we're forever going, hey, what about this, what about this? And we were talking about some of the challenges that law firms particularly have faced, particularly since COVID. And I have to say, one of the strengths in my practice has not suffered. Financially, we are probably performing better, ironically, than we were in the months in the lead up to COVID. One of the strengths in my practice has been the very things that Mel has just mentioned, has been all of the groundwork I've done in building the brand. And so we do have incredible cut through, and I've really observed this last 3 months how valuable that is to our business, and how important that is in terms of when times are tricky and when you do need to stand out in the marketplace and you do need to attract the right sort of work for your practice, not all sorts of work, but the right sort of work for your practice. So the purpose for us in bringing this together, as many of you know, I'm on a bit of a campaign at the moment of how do we help? And this webinar is for that purpose, is to share some of that knowledge from someone that I have incredible respect for, that just knows her stuff, to bring it together and hopefully help you guys, because it is a bit of a tricky time at the moment. Anyway, that's all I want to say. I'm going to be quiet again now.
Yeah, it is.
I promise.
And no, don't promise. So I think, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, when the pandemic did hit, how many people who I've been in touch with, but say haven't worked with during that time, actually said, oh, Mel, I really need, I needed that database to be ready to go, to be able to reach people. So unfortunately, when you don't have those things ready to go, and it does become a little bit challenging. But, that doesn't mean that we're not, let's think objectively. We're not going to go through something as significant as this pandemic in the future, fingers crossed.
Touch wood.
Touch wood.
I'm at a point of going, anything's possible now. So just...
Right, we never thought we'd experience this in a lifetime, but I guess what this is about look, there are always going to be ups and downs in whatever, during life and during business. It's just part of the ride. So yeah, definitely putting things in play and looking for the long game is really important, rather than the short-sighted stuff. So I guess what is really key to all of this today is, to scale reputation, we have to assume that you on this call are already doing high quality work, and that you're in a position to scale your reputation in some way. So if you do good work and you have a good reputation already, then that's great. You're in the right place, and you're perfectly positioned to now enhance your reputation, boost your visibility, obviously, and to have that broader impact that you would like to have, to reach that clientele that you'd like to. So to scale your firm and your firm's reputation and your lawyers individually, obviously key to that is having the trust of past clients, and that's normally what a lot of businesses leverage to start with, and it is often what sustains a lot of businesses. So let's have a look at what's called a trust matrix, and I've done my own version of this, and this is what I did show at the retreat last year briefly. So for those of you who were there last year, I won't go through it with a whole lot of detail, but it's worth recapping, I think, anyway. So from my experience with working with lawyers, as I said, I'm aware of the challenges and the obstacles, and sometimes the challenging and the questioning that can come when you do get a prospect on the phone or in person, or now online a lot of the time. And there is a decision-making process, obviously, that happens not only for clients, but also, ideally, you want to be able to choose them. So let's have a look at these 4 quadrants, and I want to start in the bottom right-hand quadrant, and we'll talk about the 2 sections. So there's the red and the orange in each of these each of these quadrants, and the red represents you as lawyers and how you feel about potential clients, and so the orange represents the client's thoughts about you, the lawyer, the firm, or collectively as a profession. And so there will always be people who have very high distrust of the lawyers and law firms. But I'm going to talk to you today about individual lawyers, but even though we're talking about the context of law firms. So if you have low trust in your client, what does that mean? Well, it means that you might have doubts about their capacity to listen effectively, to follow instructions, to follow through with what you need them to do as part of your service. And potentially, they're the type of clients who are slow to pay, and we've all had those before, or maybe they won't pay you at all and you've got to follow up and do all that sort of awful stuff. So these people often come with that high distrust of the profession, and it's usually because they often have to be there. They find themselves in that position where they don't wish to be engaging somebody. It's just out of necessity. And so naturally, this is the worst case scenario. That's where you obviously do not want to be playing. We don't want to be attracting that sort of market. So next we're going to look at the bottom left quadrant, and this is where some of you might be playing already currently. So this is where the client has high trust in you as a lawyer, as a law firm, but you have low trust in that client. So same thing again, they may or may not be able to pay you, they may be slow to respond to phone calls, they may be slow to reply to emails, can't keep to timelines, blow out timeframes, that others may be able to do in a more timely manner. So they probably follow through on things, but largely they're just happy to be able to access you. And so this quadrant, this market, is also one that we don't really want to be attracting, because sometimes they can be the needier ones as well. And we want to have that balance in perception, balance in capacity to pay, all those sorts of things. And then there's the top right quadrant, where you have high trust in your client because you know they have the intellectual capacity to listen effectively, to follow through with instructions, to do what you need them to do in a timely manner, and these people can afford your services. But this market, this quadrant, has high distrust, generally speaking, in lawyers as a profession, or as not necessarily you as a lawyer or a firm, but definitely as a profession, or they're really coming in not wanting to do this. So very challenged by the whole thing. And clients like these may slow things down. They might be difficult. They might be overly challenging in their questioning. They could be slow to act, slow to pay, despite their capacity to pay. And I'm sure, you know, some of you will be nodding your head thinking that you can imagine who these people are. Maybe you're working with them right now. So these may be the clients that you find yourself taking on naturally because you need the volume of work, right? Not everybody is going to be the ideal perfect client. But then we have the top left quadrant, and this is where you have high trust in your client in all capacities, and they have faith in yours, and they care less about the perception of the profession, or they have confidence in the profession, and they have belief in what you're doing, and you as a firm, as a lawyer, and your team. So this is the quadrant, and these are the clients that we naturally want to aim for. And these are the people who believe in you, maybe not your profession, but they trust in you and your firm. So there's a lot of opportunity that lies here, though, in this top half. Ideally, we want to be in that top left-hand quadrant, but that just doesn't seem to exist in the volume that you need it to in a continuously thriving practice. I think most people will find that, and tell me if you disagree. But can you do it easily? Does it exist in volume? Well, the thing is, it does exist out there, and potentially some people are getting it, or it's being spread more evenly across firms. So with effort, you can actually do more of that. So the top left quadrant is the good opportunity, but it's often highly competitive, doesn't require as much work on your part, but there's less of them, and every firm wants them, everyone wants to target them. But the top right-hand quadrant, where there is the distrust, this is where the real opportunity lies. This market has higher capacity. There are more of them. This part of the market has capacity to listen, think, act, do, and pay, even though they have low trust for the profession. So the opportunity there is when we focus on educating that market through content, and otherwise that means that they see your lawyers and your firms as separate from how they perceive lawyers, the market, the need for this service. And this is where you can grow your firm. So by working on scaling your reputation, you can get the attention of these two top quadrants. Let's get into mistakes. Did you want to add anything before we move on there, Clarissa?
I'm just silently nodding, going, it's so interesting when you break it into those quadrants. I don't think it's something I'd thought before. it's so true, isn't it? It's so true. Like, you do want to be playing in that top left corner for a whole range of reasons. That's where the enjoyable work is. It's lovely to work with people that appreciate what you're doing and you enjoy working with them. But not every client is going to be in that space, and not every lawyer is always going to be in that space. But I love the idea that there's that opportunity in terms of education. So anyway, no, you keep going. I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm writing notes.
Yeah. And look, you're clearly doing this already. And so I think, it's definitely, it doesn't just happen, because you want it to. It definitely requires some effort. So let's get into the mistakes. There's 7 of them, as I said, and some of you, if you hear some of the things that I say, that you shouldn't be doing them, I do welcome you to challenge me on some of this stuff as well. So do put your comments, Clarissa, if you don't mind keeping an eye on those comments for me, or the questions,
absolutely.
Then do that. So these are the mistakes that I see businesses doing, and that is a lot of push marketing versus pull marketing. And so, not to say that push marketing shouldn't happen, but we really need a balance of the two. So you might have heard, if you've done any sort of work with marketers, or you've investigated into marketing yourself, you might have heard about inbound versus outbound. Right. And so basically outbound is when you push a message out, things like advertising, advertorials, billboards, that sort of things, advertorials in publications, that sort of thing. Whereas pull marketing is really about inbound marketing. It's about definitely putting content out there, but it's actually designed to bring people in, as opposed to short bursts or campaigns. And so the result of focusing purely on push marketing, or spending a lot of energy, time and resources there, is that you'll find that you'll bring in varying results with that push. So I see a lot in the law space see success in, say, big billboards on the side of freeways or on buses and things like that. And so while that is great from a brand awareness perspective, it's often a big investment. It's not necessarily trackable. It definitely makes you visible, but it's normally got a bit of a time frame attached to it, right? There's that window of time where you might be visible. And it's the cost is so prohibitive that you can't continue to do that all year round for it to continuously bring results. So what happens is, when you're focused on this push marketing, if you do get an influx of business as a result of that, then what happens is you end up going, okay, well, that was effective. And then you stop advertising or stop promoting in that way, and then it quietens down. So then you're sort of stuck in this cycle of pay to get more traffic in, to get more prospects in, to get more leads in. And then, of course, looking back to the trust matrix, when you're doing big, broad advertising like that, oftentimes you're actually targeting all 4 of those quadrants. If they happen to need it at that particular point in time. Because as we know, people tend to need lawyers, other than, say, people who regularly interact with lawyers and have them as part of their everyday business dealings, let's say. It's a very much a on-demand, I need it now sort of situation, I would think. So instead, I encourage you to think about what's called organic efforts. And so definitely not discounting push marketing, not just discounting the value of brand awareness in that capacity. But when you're talking about big dollars being spent on marketing, focusing on organic is really important. So what is organic? Basically, when you have a presence online that you have built up over time, and Google does the hard work for you. So some of you will know this as in people search for a search term, say commercial lawyer Brisbane, commercial lawyer Adelaide, and people will put that search term into Google, and up will come the organic rankings, and there'll be maybe all their Google My Business listings where you can see the companies and the reviews and their location, but then you might see the ads at the top. So that's definitely that push marketing where people are paying for particular keywords. And then there's the organic listings of where you happen to sit based on that search term. So people can search obviously for specific information, or their specific information as in seeking out a lawyer for their needs. But then there's the searching that actually happens where people are looking to get educated in the lead up to perhaps needing a lawyer. They might want some questions answered before they engage a lawyer. They might do some research online, what's called informational queries or informational intent. And so Organic investment is about creating content that is owned by you on your website, that over time, when you're adding all that information and all that value, builds what's called domain authority. So your domain is your website, and your domain is your URL, right? Your, let's say, bflc.com.au. And so over time, if you are adding content to that, and of course you can share it on everywhere else as well, but you're building domain authority as long as it's done correctly. And so that is, you're using the terms that people are searching for when they're looking for either those key things, like they're actually ready to buy, to get a lawyer, they're ready to buy, they're ready to commit, or they're doing some research to figure out what they need to think about and consider and know before they actually go and start investigating who they might get to solve their issues. So what's needed is this organic approach first, and invest this energy and time into an organic approach, because over time what happens is, and BFLC is one example of this, from making all this content for such a long time, you get this organic ranking naturally. And so if you're only spending money on push marketing and pushing your business out there from an ad perspective, you're just caught in that cycle of paying for ads. And so if you can build up the organic, even alongside some advertising at the same time, that's the bigger game. That makes perfect sense, because you're actually putting yourself in a good position where you will have that position that you want far more easily. And so there's a second component to that, and a lot of you have heard me talking about nurturing processes. A lot of people pay for ads, get you to your site. We have a look at the back end for some people that we work with, and we say the back end of the site, have a look at the numbers and go, oh, look at all this traffic that you got from, that, say, that Facebook ad or this or that, a Google ad. And then we go, but they say, but we didn't, we got X amount of conversions. We were hoping that we would have got more clients out of it. Well, that's often because there is not a sequence put in place to nurture those leads, to, things like site tracking, where you can reach out to those people. We talk a lot about lead magnets in marketing, giving them something in exchange for their email, so that then you can go, okay, well, if they were interested in this information, then we want to keep in contact with them occasionally, elegantly, not pushy, and nurture them so that when they are ready to make a decision, they'll come with our firm over somebody else's. So
I think this piece is so powerful. And again, having worked with you, Mel, and you've implemented this really in my business, but the Brisbane Family Law Centre website, please don't go and look at it, everyone. I'm in the midst of a redesign. It's actually revolting, but it still ranks as either first or second in organic search ranking for the major family law searches in Brisbane, and it's incredibly powerful as a result. And a piece of work that Mel did for me a few years ago was exactly what she's talking about. We had incredible traffic coming to the site, but I wasn't doing a very elegant job of then, in essence, taking those people that were coming to the website that maybe weren't ready to book an appointment with a lawyer at that point in time, or we weren't even making it easy for them to book an appointment, because much of the traffic happens not between 9 and 5 when they can ring your office. And so something that Mel really helped us do was analyze that and build some simple tools that sit on our website that enable people that are coming and searching, if they're interested in ultimately using our services, but maybe not ready to book and speak to a lawyer today, to download ebooks or to gather information. And it's incredibly powerful. And what I love about this style of marketing and style of engaging with business is it's so trackable. So when we were running some Google campaigns and we were running ads, we genuinely can watch and see where do people go and what's working and what's not. And then you can fix it and change it. But I have really had a very simple strategy of building organic content consistently across both of my businesses. And it really has held me in good stead, particularly, as Mel says, in terms of owning that organic ranking. Incredibly powerful. If any of you have ever spent money on Google search terms, it's not cheap to do Google advertising. It's effective. It's a very effective way of bringing leads to your business, but it'll be all of those 4 quadrants. It won't necessarily be the top people that are wanting to do business specifically with you. And so the power of this, of investing in your site and investing in that content and having a strategy around that, I think really it has really worked for us. And I guess I'm endorsing everything you're saying, Mel. We've got a question from Robert. What metric do you recommend benchmarking push and pull marketing against one another to determine the right balance which is obviously always changing. Great question, not one I'm going to answer.
Yeah. So it really varies. It depends on the amount of traffic that's coming to your site, and it's hard. I mean, let's say it depends on the depth of content. If you've got people coming in to your site and they are coming in on a topic that is definitely interesting for them, then but it's actually not. Let's say I know, for instance, we've got some people who've got high volume on particular articles they've written, but it doesn't really look like it's intent-based, as in people are looking to engage a lawyer-based content. It actually looks like it's probably something that other lawyers are searching for, or law students are looking for, that sort of thing. So it's really, I've got to say, it's, you can look at conversion rates and go, okay, well, look, 5% is great of a conversion from this, and then we focus. It's about creating a rhythm. I'd love to be a little bit clearer for you, but it's definitely about looking at conversion rates and go, okay, this is what we have in play at this point. Let's watch that. Let's see how many leads come in. It also depends on the life cycle, right? So let's say for family lawyers, people might need 2 years before they make a decision they're actually going to leave their partner. So that timeline is really broad. So it's sort of a case-by-case situation, because I think if we give a measurable that's sort of broad, it's not going to apply to everybody.
Can I guess, Robert, something, and maybe ultimately you'll have the opportunity, if you wish to do a bit of an analysis with Mel at the end of this call, but what I'd be interested to know, and I don't know your business, would be, what sort of area of law you're in. Have you built up content on your site? Are you doing pull marketing at the moment, or is it all push? Like, there's probably lots of pieces there. I can tell you that I don't so much benchmark, but I would do 90% pull marketing in my firm, and as little as possible push marketing, often just because of the dollars. Like, the question I ask myself is, if I'm going to go and spend money on something in a genuine advertising way, the question I ask myself is, well, what else could I do with that money myself? And I love the creativity that comes out of the marketing space. So for me, it's like a game of, okay, well, what else could I do? Billboards particularly. Very expensive.
And it depends where you're at, right? So let's say, for example, you've got 10 team members to pay for, and you need money. Well, I'm not going to say let's invest in a long-term, strategy now, because that just doesn't make sense. You need dollars in the door. So
so Google ads might work really well in that moment. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's normally the go-to, and it makes sense. I think what I'm suggesting is you get out of that cycle when that sort of, when you're in that position where you're going, okay, well, we've got this sort of baseline, and let's invest in the stuff that's going to cost us less over time.
Yeah, completely.
Now, so we've spent a lot on mistake number 1, but that's because there's a big connection and a thread through the other mistakes. So I'm aware of time, and I do want to make sure that we get through to all of these key points.
They're used to me never finishing on time, Mel, but we will today, I promise people.
That's it. So the next mistake is unoptimized content. And so, when I look at websites, oftentimes they're quite bland in the law space. And I think that it might be this, and tell me if you're wrong, but I think that it's often people look to the firms they admire or they respect or have credibility in big reputations already in the space. And naturally, we want to emulate them in some way. And I can tell you that when you start copying content in that way, it's really not separating you at all. It's not differentiating you at all. Essentially, you're competing on reputation, and then you're always going to lose. So it's definitely coming from that perspective, but it's also, even if you are doing content, if you are writing articles, unoptimized is about, well, is your content actually going to be searchable? Are people going to discover you when they look for this information online? Are you using keywords that people are typing into, the queries that they're putting into the search engines? Are you using those terms, and are you using them in the right place, so that if people are looking for what you offer, that you will actually sit really highly? And so there's that keyword component, which is the SEO, search engine optimization component of things. And I won't get too heavy in that, but just keep in mind, it's about unoptimized content. You can go to all this effort to create content, but if it's not serving the customer or the client, and it's not serving searchability, then it's sort of wasted opportunity when you could be doing this. And so so there's that unoptimized component. I want to show you this, something that came up, and this is not Victoria, Australia, it's Victoria, I think, Canada. Now, this is somebody, now they have, I think, hired somebody to do SEO optimization for them. And I'm going to just show you this because it's a bad example. So
we always love the bad examples.
And I'm doing it only just to save you. Like I should have blacked out the photos. But anyway, they're not Victoria, Australia. So here's what we've got. So clearly the keywords that they're going after are for when people type in best Victoria family divorce lawyers or best family divorce lawyers. They've done some keyword research, right? And so we can see it in the title. And then let's read this. The best Victoria family divorce lawyers provide strategic counsel to allow Victoria family law clients to resolve challenging family law disputes involving children support and Victoria family property division. Now, if you read on, and I won't do it, and this is not...
It just keeps going, doesn't it? How do you find and hire the best Victoria family divorce lawyers?
Yes. And so I can guarantee they're going to get a lot of traffic to this site. I can guarantee it because people are going to type in Canada, let's say, that this, and this is just recently in the last week, they're going to come up and they're going to get all this traffic and they're going to be like, why aren't we getting the business? Well, maybe they are. They will get some business out of this. I don't have any doubt. But there's a disconnect here immediately between, you know, what is it doing for the reader? Like, come on, guys, you're already bamboozling me and enough with the words already. It's not human. It's keyword stuffed. And so there's this optimized content argument where you've got to just go, you know what, you can get somebody to do it and they'll do it like this. And not everybody does clearly, but this is just worst case scenario, right? So there's good ways of doing it and there's poor ways of doing it. It's about that match of optimized content and being a human.
I think, Mel, when Google was, you know, not when Google was an early thing, but certainly when I first built a website for Brisbane Family Law Centre 12 years ago, this was how you sort of were successful, wasn't it, in terms of ranking at the time? It was like stuff as many of those search words onto the page.
You had to use them,
and it worked, and it did work. And I think the algorithm has gone so far past that now. It really doesn't work. And also, as you're saying, I thought their name of their firm was Best Victoria. I thought that was
this is actually a page. Sorry, it's not a website.
Yeah, no, it is. That's right. But it's not until I get down the bottom and it says McLean or whatever it is that I'm like, oh, that's not the name of their firm. That is actually a search term. I think
that's
Robert
right.
made a really good point about 4 comments ago when it comes to writing. And you said at the beginning of this tip or this mistake, Mel, you know, where is it that lawyers go wrong with websites and with online content generally? And Robert's nailed it. We write for the wrong people, or we target the wrong people. And a little bit of that is attached to our egos and wanting to ensure that our competitors know that we know what we're talking about. And you've got to remember, with what we're talking about, with a website, it is your shop. It is your opportunity to demonstrate your skills to your customer base. And you really want business, I think, from the customer, from the client. And so all of your language needs to be targeted at the ideal client that you're trying to attract, not necessarily impressing your colleagues that you know deeply complex parts of, in my world, the Family Law Act or whatever space of law that you exist in. And I see that a lot in the online space with lawyers. It's just heavy. It's like, I know my stuff. And I'm like, I'm really glad that you know your stuff. But is the average person that's searching for a solution with something interested in that heavy stuff? In my experience, no. I love this. This is a classic.
Yeah. And Robert's right. It's called keyword stuffing. It Google penalizes you. It actually reduces your domain authority. So it actually does exactly the opposite. And so, that's really important. Kelly asked, does the content of your downloadables need to be keyword optimized? Good question. It doesn't hurt because I think it's going to appear on your site. It's immediate. So look, PDFs aren't crawlable. It's not going to be crawlable. So it depends what you do with it. A lot of times people turn their downloadables later into articles. So it's definitely something, look, it doesn't hurt because keyword optimization is normally words that regular people type into Google. So if you're using those terms that they're looking for and the content that you provide actually matches that and answers those queries properly, then it's definitely beneficial. So it's definitely something to be considered.
Good morning, Kelly. Nice to see you here.
Yeah, great to see you here. One day we'll see each other in real life.
Number 3.
Number 3 is absence of evidence of reputation. So this is back to the website again. There's a lot of definitely, and these things are important. Showing, you know, awards you've won are important. All those things are important, but they're not enough alone. And so when I talk about absence of evidence of reputation, I'm talking about storytelling. I'm talking about educating people through videos, through article content, through blogs, which then you can just distribute obviously across the social media platforms that you need to be using. But that's really what's lacking. You would sit down, I'm sure, over dinner at night or over a drink with a colleague and talk about cases and how they went wrong, or because of the actions of people and things like that. Those are the things people need to know, but they need to be attached to the things they're searching for. And so, which is separate from this, but the concept is people need to know more about you. And I use the example of this. If you've ever been somewhere and you've got family, let's say, or friends, and they know you're a lawyer, but they don't know any more than that. They don't know what type of law you practice, or maybe they know that you're a divorce lawyer, let's say, or a commercial lawyer, but they actually don't know that you solve specific problems. And they actually don't necessarily know that they would go to you for those problems. If you've ever had that happen to you, where you've got, you say, oh, you should have come and seen me, or you should have come and talked to me about that. I could have definitely helped you. I think we've all had those situations in different ways. And so by scaling reputation, by putting content out there that talks to the different problems that you solve, that you want to draw focus to, right, that you want to build in your business. We'll talk about that. Let's look at me with my hands, dramatic. Definitely the Italian culture coming through there. But if you want that, yeah, right, exactly. So that storytelling component is important. And yes, Clarissa, you did talk about potentially ego. I think it's just habit. When you put stuff out to people, if I think about court, the way that you present that gets results. So why wouldn't you do it there? So then there's that disconnect, because by that time your client's already got all this knowledge. They already know the language you're talking because it's happened. But when you're talking about beforehand, this is where you need to build the rapport, that's where you lose it. Mistake number 4 is, again, and this is even, I'm sort of tapping, is a very crossover. We can see that these are crossing over, but it's lackluster language again. So when you're using, when you're using words like, and not to say that you can't use these, but if you're telling people and using statements only, like, we are the trusted people to go to for X, Y, and Z. We are highly specialized in all of this. That's all important, but it's not the only thing that you need to be using. So lackluster language is about, yes, definitely about using jargon. It's definitely about talking at that higher level, same as your legal peers. But there's a great opportunity to, here within this, is to present from different perspectives. And so oftentimes we see law firms just broadcast content that is directly from the partners or the directors or managing director. So there's a great opportunity here to use your team to be able to leverage that, and they all talk in their own specific ways with their own specific specialties as well. So using them is really important. Leverage your people, show their faces, and it also divides a bit of the responsibility, right? And so to do this well, to have that match between content that connects and then also does what you want it to do from a search perspective, it's really good to do something like customer journey mapping. Some of you have done that with me already, but it's basically to unpack with teams how to really nut out what the problems and the concerns are that people articulate themselves when they first come to see you, and getting the language that they use. And that might mean dumbing it right down, really on a basic level. People say, oh, I need a divorce, as their first, first comment about what they need. Well, actually, no, you don't need a divorce. That's going to come much later. What you actually need to do is this, this, and this. So, it's not up to us to, I guess, explain what people, it's actually to figure out how they're articulating their problem. And if they're using the word divorce, then you use the word divorce. We help people get through their divorce. Those sorts of terms. That's a super simple example, but I think you're getting where I'm coming from.
It's a really important example, because I think, you've picked a family law example, which is obviously in the space I'm in, and I know a few people on the call are in my space. And when lawyers hear the word divorce, we think of a divorce application that ends a marriage, blah, blah, blah. In society, the word divorce usually just collectively refers to everything that's happening as a result of the end of my marriage. And it can be very confusing, I think, for clients when they're contacting a law firm or just even hunting around for information going, I need a divorce, thinking that that's going to solve all of these problems. And the lawyer's like, no, that's not the thing, that mismatch. And I love that really what you're saying is meet the client where they're at, use the language that they use. And as a part of that, then educate them around, yes, you're using that language, but what this actually, what you need or what it means or the next step is this piece down here. And it's a much more enjoyable way as well, I must say, of writing and communicating and thinking. Anyway, sorry,
it's very enjoyable,
over.
and not everyone can do it, and that's not to be awful.
True.
I know you and I talk about this a lot. I can't do my own content oftentimes because I'm too close to it, and that's truthful. I know I sent you the webinar description and went, oh, this is just not right. It's and I know that I slip into words and I have to watch myself talking about traffic. And it's like, well, that's website visitors, right? Traffic to your site. Not everyone is at the same level of understanding of what I'm talking about. Traffic, is she talking about the number of people coming into her firm? Those sorts of things are super important. And so for that reason, oftentimes the people who do it the best are the people who actually have a designated person in their business doing it, or they hire someone externally to do it and to make sure that it gets done. So definitely a focus on SEO and that CX, the customer or client experience side of things, to match the two. I think that's what most people want. And even for your most high level, let's say, the dream client that can afford to pay what they need to pay every time, they're going to resonate with that content. They're not necessarily going to be impressed by high level language, and you're just doing yourself out of potential clients, especially from that top right quadrant we're talking about. And so the next mistake is not leveraging your reputation to capacity. So currently, what a lot of business firms do is they meet with their client online or in person, and they do an excellent job. And then they finish their matter, and then we hope, let's say, for example, let's say for argument's sake, you've done 40 clients. One lawyer has seen 40 clients in a year or 20 clients in a year. That's 20 people that may or may not proactively refer you for business. So essentially what you're doing is you're developing your reputation across the desk or across the screen, one person at a time. And so what we want to be doing is actually scaling your reputation by developing rapport at a distance. And so that obviously is by using things like your website, like social media platforms, and it depends on where your clientele is, which one of those you use. But you can immediately see that if you're just playing across the desk, or if you're just putting content on your website and that's it, then that's definitely going to be problematic. So you definitely need a content strategy that comes into play with the CX side of things, the search engine side of things, so that you can get that reach that you absolutely deserve. It reinforces your reputation. What it does is create touch points. For those of you who've seen any of my presentations, I often talk about touch points, and that is the different intervals that people come into contact with your brand. And that's not just from an advertising perspective, but they come into contact with your brand, whether it be as a firm or as individuals, and all of those touch points add up. They can also be email campaigns where you're reaching out intermittently through nurture campaigns to nurture people towards doing business with you by giving them helpful information based on where they are in their decision-making process. And that also, can be done from a client delivery perspective, but it's about adding those touch points up. And the more we see people, the more they are part of our life in our day-to-day, and we're coming across them incidentally or deliberately. Those touch points add up. And you've all heard me talk about something called ZMOT, Z-M-O-T, the Zero Moment of Truth, which is a Google study that's been redone, I think probably now 4 years ago again, but it basically talks about, and it's more of an e-commerce focus, but it's about how many touch points do people on average make to tip them over the line to actually buy. And so that, that differs from business to business, and it differs from product to product in those circumstances. But we all know from our own experiences that exposure to particular businesses through advertising, through promotion, but also through content that actually is educational and informative and it demonstrates thought leadership, and people see that even if they're not necessarily even reading it. It's that visibility that you are always talking about these topics, and it's that awareness, even if they're not necessarily doing anything beyond that. So building your reputation must be done at scale. So when we're talking about scale, we're not talking about, enormous business growth scale. We're talking about scaling reputation so that you can build the business that you want to achieve, whether that's with more people or less people on your team. And so just this visual is about, you can grow your client one at a time, which is what most people are doing. And they're doing a little bit of, promotion and awareness at scale. But really we want to be doing more of this. And I think that makes sense for most people. Mistake number 6 is inconsistent visibility. Now, I don't know, Clarissa, if I have ever seen you go off social for more than a week at a time, and there normally has to be fairly significant life-changing stuff for that to happen. And so that's on a very big scale, right? Because and that's the nature of what you're doing with Happy Lawyer, Happy Life. But consistent visibility is not easy. And I think
true.
anyone who's listening and watching, and I know this myself, consistent visibility is not easy. We have bursts and then we stop. We have bursts and then we stop. And so what happens is, who gets the credibility? Who gets the visibility? Who gets the trust? Who gets the reputation? Well, it's got to be the person who is, as long as their content, again, back to that assumption, as long as their content and their services are great, they're the ones that are going to get that market. So that consistency is super important. It's going to feed your business, and it's going to create more consistency by being more visible. So what do you need to do instead? Well, you definitely need to be either involving somebody to do this, and this is their role. I think everyone will know they've gone, okay, so you, and oftentimes it might be a practice manager or somebody at the front desk, or some, a junior staff member who's really keen to do social media and is really good. Oh, you're good on Instagram. Okay, we're going to use you, that sort of thing. And that's okay. And I understand the purpose there. But what happens is those people, they're not dedicated to learning about what's working and what's not. So it is a bit scattergun. But I think more than that is that they get taken off that, because that is, when there's important things that need to get done, there's a big workload, those people are pulled and they're shared and they're divided. And so that is what creates that issue. So definitely you need someone to do it for you, so that it's scheduled to go. But again, always coming back to a proper strategy, SEO focused, client focused, all that sort of stuff. And like anything, in the work that you do, strategy is everything. And strategy does need to change. It's like not set. Oftentimes you hear about content calendars and they're a great place to start. Here's our 12-month calendar. Okay, there we go. That's what we're going to do. Well,
then a pandemic comes.
Or a change.
It ruins everything.
Practice directions comes, and there's some important things coming out. So all of those things are, definitely. And look, pandemics aside, because they don't happen very often.
Thank heaven.
Fingers crossed. Yes. There is relevancy is important as well. You want to be part of conversation. So I know for our clients, what we did during the pandemic is we went, and you would have seen a lot of people, all of a sudden everyone discovered the email list that they had, and everyone educating their market on what they're doing during the pandemic.
On these unprecedented times.
Yes, yeah. And look, we're all guilty of it. I mean, if we haven't done it, then of course you're going to use your email list and you're going to tell everybody, because you want to make sure. We were all in that scarcity mindset. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Our business is going to fall apart. We need to know people. We need to educate people that we're going to give them a safe way to do business with us. I get it, and it's important, and I'm not criticizing that. But I guess what I'm getting at is that it's the most consistent will always win. So, I think a lot of people might have seen some unsubscribes as a result of that. But, when that's peppered in amongst other valuable stuff, definitely important. Mistake number 7 is focusing on high interest marketing. And so some people, so here's what I guess what this can be is focusing on social media. And I'm not anti-social media and marketing on social media. I'm not. I want to say that. I think what's important is to identify what's really going to actually get results, because you can spend energy on particular platforms because it's enjoyable, because we see other people doing really well on that platform, or we see them really visible on that platform. And that's a really sort of, I guess, surface level connection to go, that's where I need to be. And so again, it's about thinking through where your audience are going to be. Every business is really different, and it needs to come back to something that I call priority growth focus. And if you've ever been in on any of my webinars, or if you're in Mastermind, we've got this plan, and basically it does this. We list out all the services you offer. We list out all of the the price points and the margin attached to those. First of all, we look at what their business goals are. What are you looking to do? Are you looking just to get dollars in the door because, wages have got to be paid? Or are you actually looking to grow and do other, objectives? But we have a look at all those, have a look at the margin, see where the opportunity lies, see if that matches back to the business goal, and prioritize where you're going to spend your energy. Because if you're, let's say promoting a service that one service where everyone else is competing, if you're coming at it from a different angle, or pushing or promoting rather a different service and become really well known for that, that could actually be more advantageous. I've been doing a lot of that recently with people, and just having that conversation, the switch happens really quickly. It's like, okay, well, now we need to focus on this instead. That makes sense because it's evidence that shows us. So I want to talk about evidence really quickly, because it's a big part of everything. What we do is we look at people's historical data on their website, and we have an investigation and show people what has been happening. Where's the traffic been coming from? Where's the web visitors coming from? Are they coming to you directly? Are they typing in the name of your firm? Are they looking for particular lawyers? Are they which pages are actually getting the most volume? Normally it's the home page and the About Us page. But beyond that, what are the most highly visited pages? Then unpacking, well, why are they the most visited pages? Is it because we've got a bunch of lawyers looking to find out how to get a job, or is it, or is it actually, content that's more client or prospect, focused, that sort of thing. So I encourage you to focus on, or to look to evidence-based marketing, to have a look at where things have been, what's been happening historically, discuss about what's going on goal-wise, and then actually find a match about how you're going to do that and what's the best avenue. Sometimes it's the most unsexy avenues, the most unattractive avenues that will have the greatest traction, the greatest conversion. So I've got a whole lot more notes, but I won't talk about this for days and days. And so I do welcome your questions. I think what's probably key to all of this is you want to take people from being unaware, either completely that your firm exists, or that what you do as a lawyer, to getting people to become more familiar with what it is, who you are, what you operate. And so it's about familiarity. But then by creating content and publishing and talking about topics that people need to know about, and even just being visible, as I said, having those touch points where people know, oh, she talks about that, or he talks about that, or that's what he's always on about. It's this combination of the two that will get you the trust and will get you that market. And so we've got familiarity is the first bit, so being aware. Credibility is that next layer. That's that visibility, and that's not just video, that's a whole range of things, obviously. And then it's that consistency that just levels that up.
So good.
So I encourage you to, beyond today, have a think about where you're spending your resources and where you should spend your resources. And if you're playing a shorter game continuously, or if you're playing a longer game. And I encourage you to strongly to think about the longer game, because it can sit alongside a shorter game, or ads and get leads in, but you want to be playing there. And what's interesting is you've got companies who've done this, for either accidentally, who've got all this content sitting there that's really valuable, and they're naturally sitting there organically. But if you're a newer firm, you've got a bit of work to do to sort of get there, and you need strong strategy to know where your opportunities lie, so that you can get in those positions organically rather than having to pay for it. So I just realised I've got extra slides here. I'll go through these super quick. So the question is, what is the long game? It's when a prospect knows they need your services. That's one component. That's how we get business in. When a referral network knows someone who needs your services. Again, so it's always about that reach. So you want to be front of mind, play the long game, not developing reputation one at a time, but doing it at scale.
See you, Rach.
Thanks, Rachel. Have a good vacation.
See you, Rach.
Yeah, so I do have this. I do have a package that I'm offering. I normally sell it for this price, and for people who wish to learn more about this, to want to do an analysis into what's happening for them, have a discussion about what they've done historically, where they want to go, those sorts of things, get a traffic review, get some solid evidence and insights. I would do that with people, get a recommendations report of what you need to be doing next. And that is that. That's where you can take a look at it.
Yeah, that's what, Kelly, I saw your question. That's what I was about to say. I was like, can you just do this? So Kelly asks a great question. I want someone to help me with everything that Mel's talking about. What person do I need? And everything that Mel and I believe in is strategy. And so for us, it comes back to, well, what are you trying to get done in your business? What's your business goal? Because your marketing goal needs to sit with your business goal. There's no point saying, oh, I'm just going to go do a Facebook thing because everyone's on Facebook. Let's do Facebook. Well, what's the purpose in that? How does that connect back to you? What are you trying to get done? And the thing I've loved, having learned what I have from Mel, having worked with her, is it all comes back to evidence, strategy, like genuinely, what are we trying to get done? What does the evidence show us now? Let's do something and let's track it and let's genuinely see if this is working. And I love that because years ago, I put a billboard up here in Brisbane. And I was so proud of myself. Look at me, new lawyer with my fancy billboard in Ascot. Nothing. You can't track that.
I did a huge radio campaign in my first business. And I think I paid $10,000 for it over a period of time. And we did try to track it. A marketer husband, career marketer. It's like, we need a measurable. I don't like you doing this. We need a measurable. So we had a custom 1300 number to track it. And same, like it was just dismal.
And they're expensive, but you feel so proud. It's like, look at me, here I am with my billboard. Well, I've made it in life.
Yeah, and it feels right though, doesn't it? Because if they're doing it, like that's what we do, isn't it? Visibly see they're doing. What we can't see is the other stuff.
And this is where online is just so powerful. And there's still such opportunity there in the law space, I think, because there aren't a lot of firms that have really worked this out. And so if you do spend the time, the energy, play the long game, as Mel said. I started really investing in online 7 years ago when we met in this business course, and I learned about this thing called content marketing. And so much of what I have done has been trial and error, has been, oh, okay, that worked. All right, just keep doing that. Add this bit, researching, but particularly watching businesses that sit outside of law. You will get the best inspiration if you pay no attention to law firms and move outside of law. That is, I think, where all of the opportunity lies. So have a look at what other businesses are doing. Have a look at fashion. Fashion gets this like nothing else. And take inspiration from that. Don't copy anyone ever. Some of you are in my social media course at the moment, so Avril will be sick and tired of hearing me say that. Never copy anyone, but look at what other industries are doing and then think to yourself, how can I apply that in law? That's how you become a change maker, is by going, oh, that works in the car industry. How do I make that apply in law? Anyway, we could talk about this for hours. If there are any further questions, now is your time. Otherwise, Mel, that's the website, isn't it, for people to get in touch with you, to ultimately do that review. And then Mel's business ultimately can help you do all of the things that we've spoken about today. So you can reach out to her whenever you like. Guys, I'm sort of pulling in all of the humans in my life to run webinars, hopefully on about a fortnightly basis at the moment, on all different aspects of law firm business. So requests, send them through. But yeah, you'll probably see Mel on another one at some point because she's like a little world of business knowledge, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for this today, Clarissa. Thank you for everyone joining. But yeah, I'm going to hang around for some questions if you've got them. More than happy to answer them. Hopefully I haven't missed any up the top there.
I think we got them all.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for being so diligent on that. Yeah, great opportunities. I think what's really important is that, as you touched on it before, lawyers and law firms tend to pay for ads. And it's really interesting when we do keyword research reports and we do competitor analysis, which I didn't talk about earlier, but we do competitor analysis and we see where people are ranking and what they're ranking for. And it's really interesting, and there's just so many opportunities there. So you'd be crazy not to be investing before it's too late. Do you know what I mean? And I do mean that. I'm not doing that from a scarcity mindset stuff. It is actually, you know, once people make, and it's wonderful because Laura's a little bit slow to market on these things, but you know, there is this window of opportunity, and not to say there won't be in future, but it's just going to cost more.
Yeah, that's so true. It just gets busier, doesn't it? It's like when I first started the blog, that was the first of the blogs. Now there's blogs everywhere. It's the same as the podcast. It was the first of the podcast. Now there's podcasts everywhere. So in a perfect world, you do want to try and be at the front end of this. We can't always be. But get in now. I agree with that. Like, start the process. And that long game, it is about that consistency, and it's having a process where you say, you know, this is our strategy, this is our process, this is who's doing it, this is when it's happening, and not losing that when a pandemic hits or when the busy file takes over the office or all of these things. We have to see value in these parts of our businesses and invest in them and keep them consistent. And the learning for me in my business is it has to be driven for me. I can delegate parts to others, but they'll never really understand how important this is and why it drives our business forward. And so it has to be led by the leaders of your organization. You can't really just go, hire this person, best of luck, see you later, enjoy that. You are going to have to invest time in it, but it's a great thing. You will get the best customer feedback from doing these sorts of activities, learning more about who you're working with, tailoring your solutions. Like, it just enables a whole of business shift, which is really powerful. Any other questions, kind people that have stuck with us this whole hour? Very good of you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your comments, everyone. Thanks for joining today. All these client calls, 9 o'clock.
Everyone's like, let's go. Thanks, Robert, for all of your helpful little comments along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going to go and hunt down your business. I feel like you're up to some fun things.
Yeah, definitely knows what we're talking about today. So
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everybody. All right. Thank you, Clarissa. Appreciate you. Yeah, giving me this opportunity to do this. Beautiful.
Go and have a good Thursday.
Have a great Thursday. Take care, everyone.
Bye.